Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Episode 14. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from nyfights.com. Daniel will not be with us this evening. Daniel from Four Boxing News and the Inscriber. He is currently away on a little bit of a vacay, I believe it is.
That's right.
So,
On assignment. He's on assignment.
right. So we wish him wells and safe travels. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc., discussing all things boxing. The motto is: when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it has anything to do with the sweet science, it will get discussed. For those who want to check out any and all information pertaining to Pound for Pound Box Report, the site is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us with any questions, comments, thoughts, etc., you can do so. P4pboxing at P4pboxingreport.com. On the site, um, you'll find links to where to find us on all social media platforms, links to the YouTube channel, links to the pages on Facebook, Twitter, IG, Tumblr, links to where you can find Pound for Pound Box Report on your favorite podcast platform, be it Spotify, be it Anchor, be it Google Podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, you will find Pound for Pound Boxing Report. If you wish to donate, let donation be the best nation. Gotta pass me and get PayPal donation links. It wouldn't matter to us. So $1, $2, $5. Would not matter. Would help the overall production behind the scenes. And last but certainly not least, for those who are looking to get their body right for the summer, please check out the link to BODI, formerly known as Beachbody. If you're looking BODI, formerly known as Beachbody, programs for any suitable fitness interests and goals. If you're looking to lift weight, I suggest you check out Lift 4, the updated version of that, Lift More, Body Beast. If you're really looking to challenge yourself, programs like Muscle Burns Fat, 645, 6 weeks of the work, the P90X series, they still go hard. The Insanity and the Insanity Asylum series still go hard. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, I suggest you check out 10 Rounds, 6-week program, 3 days a week of boxing based cardio, 2 days a week of weightlifting. At the very least, take advantage of the 14-day trial, and that is for 14 days, free 14-day trial, excuse me. You get free access to any and all programs on on BODI, including the sample workout of the new Chop Wood Carry Water program that's going to drop, I think later on this year or early next year. I can't remember. But I've done the sample workout, a pretty good workout. It's the same guy for those who are familiar with BODI. Wallace Caesar, the guy who does 645 and 6 weeks of the work. He's coming out with a new program called, again, Chop Wood, Carry Water. Let's get into the show, Gail. Pretty a number of good fights that took place over the weekend, and some decent fights to preview as well. But let's take a look back. And where should we start? Let's start over in Japan. The biggest fight of the week, as far as I was concerned. We talked about it in good detail last week, and that is the rematch between Joshua Franco and Kazuto Ioka. They previously fought a draw December of last year and fought again, but what we didn't know was a lot of controversy clouding this rematch. Ioka won by unanimous decision, but there was a lot going on prior to the bell ringing. But let's go on the fight first, Gail. For me, and you should be able to find a video of this bout. Boxing Twitter was running all over the place trying to find a live feed. They couldn't find it. It was in Japanese pay-per-view, so it was extremely difficult to find. But I was able to get a video of it. And in the first fight, Gail, Franco, he set the tone early. his size played a major role in the fight. And to me, he won the battle of the jabs, and he was the fresher guy. As Ioka did good work, but he was tired at the end of that first fight. Many people felt that Franco won. In this bout, things went a bit different. Ioka was more in the pocket, more stationary, did an excellent job of punching in between the punches of Franco. And to me, he was in better shape, right? And that all played a role in the win. Franco slower on his feet, and we'll get into why during the discussion. But Ioka, he sought out this rematch ASAP because he was unhappy with his performance in his previous bout. Improved significantly, and it resulted in a unanimous decision win.
Yeah, credit to Ioka. He saw what the problems were in the first fight that didn't allow him to get the decision, and he made the corrections. Clearly, he adjusted his training regimen. He was in way better condition. In fact, by the time he got to the 9th round, he was kind of messing around, dancing. He stuck his tongue out at Franco because he thought he was way ahead. He wasn't that far ahead, but he was definitely ahead. He was by far the more effective puncher. He wasn't the busier puncher. Franco was, but Franco's punches were just not as effective. He came in not the greatest condition, which we'll get into, and it is really hard to divorce the outcome of the fight from the way Franco came into the fight, not just physically, but as we found out later, mentally. And there was a lot of controversy leading up to the fight and the reasons alleged for Franco's condition. All that aside, Ioka was the one who did what he needed to do to improve from his performance 6 months ago. It showed, it won him the fight, it won him that WBA super flyweight title. And now he wants to try to unify, and I think he's got a very, very good chance at doing it, although Junto Nakatani will have something to say about it. But credit to Ioka. He burst into tears when he heard the decision read, and he certainly earned it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You mentioned Junto Nakatani. We'll talk about the future here, but it seems like that Ioka has his targets on a potential fight with a Gallo Estrada. But let's talk about the stuff, for lack of a better word,
there is
that
stuff.
went on
There is
leading
stuff
up to the fight, right? Wrote about this on Three Kings Boxing. Please check out threekingsboxing.com, your source for pure, unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire staff and crew over there. 2K, aka Prodigy of Boxing, Talk to the Man Behind Three Kings Boxing. Bo, who you had been on this show numerous times, head of media relations, senior writer. Myself, fellow senior writer, Bakari, senior writer, as well as the contributors, and Red, who does a lot of work on the site behind the scenes, right? Word broke late or early Friday morning here, U.S. time, that Franco was significantly overweight, right? 6+ pounds over the 115-pound limit. Subsequent follow-up weigh-in, and Franco was still overweight. So there was that issue. And as a result, Franco was stripped of the belts at the weigh-in. And then there was the controversial nature regarding Ioka, as we found out actually right before the fight, that rumors running about on boxing Twitter that Ioka, who, let's face it, likes his ganja, has had issues with marijuana vis-a-vis the Japanese Boxing Commission, right? Word on the street was that Ioka had traces of marijuana in his system in a pre-fight drug test. That still has not been clarified, but from what we're hearing now, that may have affected the preparation of Franco and his trainer Robert Garcia, who were led to think that the fight was going to be pulled off. Turned out it wasn't. May have played a role in him coming overweight. what do you make of all that went down leading up to this fight?
It's messy. It is just plain messy. Nobody really has given us a straight story with a start, a middle, and a finish. We hear after the fact, after Franco's incredible failure on the scale, which is not normally been an issue for him, that he and Garcia were told by Ioka's team the fight was off because Ioka had popped dirty for a drug test. Well, boxing media in Japan said, we didn't hear anything about that. And everybody's thinking, wait a minute. So you're believing the word of your opponent's team and you didn't check this out, or did you? No clarification there. So apparently this is the reason Franco eased off his pre-fight weight drop down. Well, you shouldn't be doing that until you have some official word from either the people that are signing your paycheck, or you show up for the weigh-in and you don't get on the scale, or there's just a lot of missing parts to the story. I tend to believe the reputations of someone like Robert Garcia, and I have no reason to think Franco had done anything shady. I think he truly believed this, but it seems awfully naive, or somebody's not paying attention. In any event, Franco comes in massively overweight. Ioka's team agrees to move forward with the fight. He really, really wanted that rematch. He's a warrior. He's not going to say no to the fight because Franco is overweight if he believes in his skills. And he was right. He did the right thing. That had to have affected Franco's performance. Speed is Franco's greatest asset. And way down like that, when you're not used to fighting at that weight, because surely whatever he drained to on the scale, drained, air quotes around that, because his drained weight from having to come in at 115 was 121, everyone. So who knows how much he weighed fight night. Plus, just going in with a bad mindset about the rematch, that's not good for you either. And as it turned out, less than 24 hours after the fight was over, Franco announced via all his social media accounts that at age 27, he is retiring. And he's not retiring like Teofimo Lopez claimed he's retiring. He is fully done, retired. He said that he had been battling mental health issues for most of his career, had never spoken about it publicly. He didn't ever want it to become an excuse for why he lost a fight, in his words. Thanked his team, thanked everybody who'd ever supported him, said he's going to, move forward. He's got things he wants to do and work on, and seemed to be very settled in the decision to retire. But wow, who saw that coming? He lost. He didn't get blown out. Any poor performance, honestly, he did to himself. It's not like he really beat himself in large part. So was something else going on that we don't know about that he's just simply chosen not to disclose, which is absolutely his right? It's a shame. It's really a shame. He's been a fine fighter. It's been a lot of fun to see him and his brother, Bam Rodriguez, both making their way up through those lower weight divisions, supporting each other. And I have no doubt we will see Franco ringside, not only at Bam's upcoming fights, but probably everybody else there at Robert Garcia Academy. And I wouldn't doubt that after some time off, maybe he decides he wants to get back involved outside the ring, trainer, sparring partner for his brother. Who knows? But he says his competitive days are over. He does go out as a former world champion. And, that's not a bad thing to be able to say about yourself after 23 professional fights. That's his entire professional career.
In a statement that he dropped on IG early Sunday morning, very early Sunday morning. So I'm guessing he was still over in Japan. He's still over in Japan when he announced his retirement. He cited that he's been dealing with some issues of mental health for a long time. Just didn't talk about it publicly. Uh, if he's retired, if he sticks to this, right? We wish him, we salute his career and wish him nothing but the best in his future endeavors. But part of me, Gail, is like, okay, he's going through the drama of the week of the fight, uh, down after losing losing the title on the scales. I wonder if once he gets back home and has some time to decompress, right, that he may have a change of heart. He's only 27 years old. He proved in that first fight that uh, he can really fight and can compete with anybody at 115 pounds. And as you noted, Gail, he didn't look just flat out terrible in this fight. So I wonder 6 months from now that he will have a change of heart. We mentioned Ioka as well. You mentioned Nakotani, who recently won the vacant WBO belt at 115. Uh, Ioka vacated that WBO belt, rather than fighting Nakatani, who was his then mandatory contender, just for the sake of fighting Franco again. I mentioned that he wanted a fight with Gallo Estrada, and the reason I'm focusing on that, Gail, is because Gallo was in attendance ringside for their first fight for Ioka. Franco won back in December. Ioka, even before that first fight, was talking about a fight with Gallo. The fact that he's done that, the fact that Gallo was in attendance for that first fight, the fact that in the lead up to the week of this fight, and you can see this on threekingsboxing.com again, Ioka is talking about Estrada. To me, all roads leading to is Ioka trying to fight, excuse me, Estrada, and I got a suspicion that he's perfectly willing to come to the United States to do that.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure both of them are. But, I don't think that is a big money fight here in the United States. It is sure as hell is a big money fight either in Japan or Mexico. I'm not quite sure why they would want to come on to neutral turf like that when this is, a major event in either of their two home countries, other than there being some concern, perhaps that it's going to give one or the other the edge. If they're in Mexico, then El Gallo's got the edge, or if they're in Japan, Ioka has the edge, and they're going to argue about it. But wow, I really have a hard time thinking they want to leave that kind of money off the table. It is a very makeable fight, probably in Southern California, where there is a big fan base, both Japanese and Mexican fans. There's been a proven turnout in the long series of Superfly, sort of quasi tournaments that Tom Loeffler put on. Really, really successful. But still, I mean, to say it again, I just cannot believe they couldn't do a bigger fight at either Japan or in Mexico. I am just checking the records real quick to see if Gallo has ever fought in Japan, and I do not think he ever has in his career. Nope, but looks like he's fought in Macau. It's about as close as he's ever gotten. That's not a bad idea either, to put it in Macau. As for Ioka, I think all his fights have been in Japan, haven't they? Or mainly. So
He fought in part of that Superfly series.
Ioka?
Fought in the United States. Ioka, yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
20,
Well, let's
2016, 2015, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So I I don't block your calendar just yet. I mean, unless you want a trip, somewhere to see a really cracking good fight, and I'd love to see a card like this put together. He actually fought on the same card on New Year's Eve in 2018 as Gallo in Macau. That's when he had his fight that he lost to Donnie Nietes. So, yeah, and he did fight McWilliams Arroyo. That's right, in 2018. Well, that was the fight just prior. Otherwise, all his fights have been in Japan. So, stay tuned. The good news is that Ioka has leverage because he has the belt. That's what he wanted, and it would be great if both these guys unified and came at this to produce an undisputed fight. We'll see what happens. Lots of good options, and this is actually great news for Gallo Estrada because he's pretty much run through everybody else. Ioka gives him, a new opponent to, get busy with. So that's great.
Let's stick at 115, right? It's part of a DAZN card over in New York City. We just talked about WBA champion or the WBA belt on the line between Franco Ioka rematch, the IBF champion in that division, guy by the name of Fernando Martinez. Followers of the lower weights know that he's the guy who beat a former champion, former long-reigning IBF champion, German Cajas, last year. Beat him again. First defense was a rematch win against Ancajas. Fought a guy, mandatory contender by the name of Bornea, a Filipino, right? And Martinez got the win, but a lot of the talk among boxing Twitter was something that happened that you rarely see in the sport. I remember seeing it years ago in a fight with oh gosh, put it this way, I've seen it in a fight on ESPN years ago in which a guy was beaten to the point where there was severe damage on his ear falling off, and you saw it in this case as well, as all the talk was about the state of Bornea's ear. Fernando stopped him in 11th, but yeah, gruesome injury in the process suffered by one Bornea.
Yeah.
Antonio Margarito, excuse me, Gail. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And a fight featuring Antonio Margarito back in the early aughts. A fight was stopped
Margarito's
as a
out.
result
Shit
of a guy. He defeated an Argentinian fighter in which his ear was literally just dangling in the breeze. And you saw something similar in this fight where Martinez hit him with a shot in particular, and it just caused Bornea's ear to explode to a gruesome, grotesque mess.
Yeah, Martinez is promoted by Marcos Maidana, and he's got that kind of aggressive style, and he was delivering a steady stream of hooks, and they kept landing toward the left cheek on Bornea. So, you were seeing the accumulation of punches on the face, but by the midway through the fight, you realize that the ear was taking damage. So some of those punches must have been straying backward just a little bit or a little further in. And Martinez described the injury. He said when he hit him with a left hook in the 7th round, he said it popped, it exploded. And that he said to the referee, be cautious. He's really hurt. Well, he says that, and then he keeps going after the ear to try to finish the fight in his own words. And he said that, he thought the fight was very even through 7. But then the injury happened to the ear, and, he pressed forward, and Bornea said the same thing. So they were both seeing the fight very even until that happened. And Bornea said, hey, it's unfortunate. It happens. He tried to keep going. But Martinez was starting to gain ground, and obviously the injury alters Bornea's performance, even though he kept trying. So he He was being outlanded. He was being caught up. Referee Charlie Fitch was keeping a very close eye on them, and he's an excellent referee. No complaints with Charlie this weekend. A few others came up for complaints. That seems to be happening frequently lately. Fitch finally called the fight off in the 11th round, and at that point, Bornea would have needed a knockdown or knockout. You could tell that wasn't going to happen. So Bornea had to be horribly disappointed since he was fighting right there with Martinez until this happened. But injuries are part of boxing. It's kind of interesting as I think back about it, why this doesn't happen more often. Your ear is very well protected for a reason, because those structures are delicate. You got a lot of bones around your skull and cartilage and stuff there for that very reason. But if you're gonna bang at it with kind of power and speed a professional prize fighter does, it's gonna happen. But let us assure anybody who either watched or didn't watch and wasn't paying attention, no teeth, no biting occurred in this fight. The injuries were all legit. No teeth got to an ear.
Yeah, you ask why this doesn't happen more often, or at the very least, you don't see more situation of boxers suffering cauliflower ear like you see in uh, college amateur wrestling, or even MMA, given the way the fighter boxers get hit upside the head and around the around in and around the ear area. But yeah, that was the situation in this case. He just got hit in a sensitive
You,
part
the
of
only
the
thing
ear,
I can think,
probably, maybe. Go ahead.
the only thing I can think is, we've all seen somebody get hit to the temple, and it doesn't really appear to be an incredibly powerful punch. But boy, if you put it in the right place, you really mess up your opponent's equilibrium, and they're wobbling immediately. But that means you've got to punch clear of the ear to accomplish that. And I think most fighters just really don't aim for the ear on purpose. And there is a lot of padding right there. So there's kind of wasting their time. That's got to be the reason that we don't see it more often. But in this case, I wonder if there'd maybe ever been a prior injury, some odd thing happened, maybe not even boxing related. Who knows? He's going to definitely need some good plastic surgery, though. Hopefully, he's got a line on somebody to fix him up.
Yeah, and in terms of the champ here, Martinez, do people consider him to be uh, um, amongst the top with the Iokas, with the Estrada, with the Chocolatitos, or Nakatani, who just won the WBO belt? No, but during the week he says that he should be up there in the conversation, and he's giving himself he's stating his case why he stated his case why maybe he thinks he should be up there, and at the very least it was a memorable fight for the injury to Bornea, and people want to see him again. And where he goes from here, who knows? Maybe he'll get a big fight but given how that fight went, people will want to see him again, uh, just based on his performance, uh, the damage that he had towards his opponent, and for those who've been reading between the lines, the way he's been talking himself up during the week. He's making a state. He's making a case for himself. At the very least, he's making a case for himself, and that's really all you can do as a fighter. This bout was on the undercard of Edgar Berlanga, excuse me, his matchroom debut against Jason Quigley. And I know that Berlanga was on a year layoff, but and I know he knocked Quigley down in this fight, but I was watching highlights of it, and I was reading the comments on boxing social media, the live commentary of this fight, and I'm like, it was mid. It was mid. That was the impression I get, that people was like, yeah, he got the win, but
Yeah, I think every single boxing reporter's articles or YouTube reports were Edgar Berlanga won, yeah, but there is a but in every single report. Berlanga won. Berlanga dominated on the cards. Berlanga scored 4 knockdowns in the fight, but he couldn't close the show against a guy who gives a very honest effort. He's not a tomato can, if that's a proper description to use. He put forth a good effort. He was effective at limited opportunities. There were a few flashes where you thought, "Whoa, is he going to make this competitive? Is he going to win a few rounds?" He won a few rounds. None of that should have happened. Demetrius Andrade blasted through Quigley in a round. And when's the last time anyone called Boo Boo a knockout artist? Well, the next time will be the first time. So he did it. He's also has suffered every single time he's lost, he was stopped. And Berlanga couldn't do it. So I'm not willing to write him off just yet. Eddie Hearn, you get one more chance in the rehabilitation tour of Edgar Berlanga. There's no doubt the guy sells tickets. He's polarizing. He's starting to head down that road of, I can't believe I'm saying this. Maybe I should ask. No, Michael, I was going to ask you to stop me. I'm not going to have you stop me. He's heading down the road of Adrian Broner and Rolly Romero. He is. And there's a role for guys like that in boxing. The playing the heel, playing the polarizing personality. You either love him or you hate him. But either way, you're so emotional about him, you got to watch him. Is that where we're going with Edgar Berlanga? I think we are. And a guy like that can last a while, even if he takes a few losses. He hasn't done that yet. But, were we oversold and underdelivered on Berlanga? We were. Whose fault is that? Not necessarily Berlanga's.
ESPN, who hypes him up so much in his early fights.
ESPN and Top Rank, who've now, kicked him to the curb. They really did. And I will say this. A lot of what happened with Berlanga happened during the worst days of the pandemic. And, boxing was one of the few sports that continued fairly early on. And it was Top Rank who pioneered this whole bubble protocol that eventually was adopted that let boxing finally get back on its feet pretty quickly, considering, and continue. And they were desperate, for talent. A lot of the top names were like, we're not going through that bubble thing. Let's see if we could just wait this whole COVID out. And a lot of them did, as long as they could. But the younger guys were like, yeah, you want to put me on TV in a main event? As long as I agree to stay in the MGM in the bubble over there? Heck yeah. And lo and behold, he walks through that open opportunity, one Edgar Berlanga. So I am willing to give him as much benefit of the doubt as I can, but that's going to start running thin. I'll give him a couple more fights to see what we got. Let's get to work. He's back with his original trainer. I think that's a good move for him. It's hard to expect a lot with just one fight under their belt, on the second go around. But damn, he missed resurrecting interest in him, legit interest, by not being able to close that show with Quigley. We still don't know for sure. Does it say more about Berlanga, or does that say more about the determination of Quigley to not let it happen? Either way, Berlanga needs to get back in there, work his ass off, which he claims he's going to. I'm willing to give him a shot to do it.
Talk of him in the aftermath of a fight between Berlanga and Jaime Munguia, who we talked about, I believe, on the last episode. the likelihood of that fight happening fall of this year?
Yeah. Munguia took, pretty fair amount of punishment from Derevyanchenko. I mean, he's got, as we now know, if we didn't know before, he's got a pretty tough chin. Um, he did not get seriously cut or anything, but he's going to need a little time off. And I would assume Berlanga would like some time off, not necessarily because he needs any recovery time. He needs training time. Can they put that fight down the road here? Maybe November, December, as the calendar opens up, post Mexican Independence Day. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Lord knows, though, the problem is not going to be between Munguia and Berlanga. The problem is going to be between Oscar De La Hoya and Eddie Hearn, who were, clapping at each other on social media like they were middle school girls. It was ridiculous. Come on, you two grown men, knock that shit off. You have differences between yourselves. You want to negotiate or call each other names, man to man, fine. But both of you need to grow up.
I have no more to add to that. Other than to say
Your
you're
Auntie
absolutely
Gail
right.
here is telling you to shape up for it. Slap you both.
I have no more to add to that.
But I like
Situation
that. I
where
like that fight. I think that's a dangerous fight for Berlanga, though. I really do.
I too will give Berlanga the benefit of the doubt. Some giving the leaking time off, knocking out some rust. He said he's going to be better in his next fight. And if that is Munguia, say what you want about their talent on an individual level. Styles make fights in this sport, and put those two in the ring together because both guys are there to hit and to get hit. It would make for an exciting fight, and it would get a lot of attention. And again, Styles make fights, and this is a bottom line business here. And money demands, cash rules. Put it that way, cash rules, and there will be a high demand of this for that fight, and it will get good numbers, and it couldn't help but be a heck of a entertaining scrap. Put it
Oh,
that
yeah.
way.
And
Put
it's
an entertaining
Mexico,
scrap.
Mexico versus Puerto Rico fight. You got
Right.
built-in fans. Munguia is a great draw on the East Coast. Berlanga is a great draw on, pardon me, Munguia is a great draw on the West Coast, especially in Southern California. Berlanga obviously is a huge draw in New York. So they've both got that going for them. And, it might not be Kraft, but we might get Rios Alvarado. And, you you get good fights like that, they tend to end up being a series. And I don't wish that kind of damage on either one of them. The older I get, the less I like to see it. But that's what's coming down.
Yeah, indeed. Let's move from that card in New York to what took place in the Armory in Minneapolis, which is becoming a little bit of a hotbed, a little bit of a hot spot for fights, particularly on Showtime. PBC seems to be a fave locale for the folks over at PBC Showtime. Many people remember Erickson Lubin last time, or remember Erickson Lubin for his loss, seventh round stoppage against help me out, Gail, the super tall Fendora, Fendora, right? And made his return to the ring against Luis Arias. And dare I say, I was kind of impressed with Lubin. Got off a little bit of a slow start, feel out process, but once he stepped on the gas, Gail, he disposed of Arias quickly, and it was the stopped him in 5, and it was the kind of performance that's like, hey, maybe Fundora didn't take everything out of him. Maybe Erickson Lubin still has something left. Uh, confidence building effort on the part of one Erickson Lubengale.
Yeah, absolutely. Really a good performance. Just what he needed. A lot of times the guy is backed into a corner of having to perform like Lubin did. he was a prospect of the year for a lot of us back in the day, expected great things. And that Fundora fight with Lubin was fight of the year. Crazy back and forth, dramatic fight, which Fundora pulled out. Very unexpected. But we've now had Fundora's first fight after that and Lubin's first fight after that. And who outperformed the other? Lubin way outperformed Fundora. Fundora lost to Brian Mendoza pretty handily. Lubin took care of business. It's a very interesting turn of events. And I'm already starting to hear chatter about let's get Lubin back in the ring with Fundora and let him get his revenge, because he was on his way to winning the fight till the tide turned. Remember, he knocked Fundora down, although Fundora, and he's right, Fundora did proactively take a knee to avoid going all the way down so he could collect himself, which is a very smart thing to do, and it probably saved him the fight. But who would love to see that rolled back now? However, he's going to have to wait, because it looks like Fundora and Mendoza are going to rematch. So we'll need to wait for the outcome of that fight. And if Fundora doesn't show himself well against Mendoza, I think the interest in the Lubin-Fundora rematch might go down past the threshold of being able to be made. We'll see. But Erickson Lubin has absolutely opened up lots of opportunities for himself with that performance. Good for him.
100%, 100%. That was the main undercard of a guy who's making a case that he could be possibly the best middleweight in the world. And I'm talking to one Carlos Adames, right? WBC interim champion at 160 pounds, fought former unified 154-pound champion Julian J. Rock Williams. Competitive scrap throughout, but Adames was in control, in my opinion, Gail. And Williams made a big hubbub about how the fight ended. I believe it was stopped in 11. Got hurt, was still kind of fighting back, but I wasn't mad at the stoppage because Adames at that point was in control. That issue aside, in the post-fight, Adames is saying that he should be named full-time WBC champion. Think that the current WBC belt holder, 160 pounds, Jamal Charlo, who we'll talk about in a bit, should be stripped because Charlo has not defended that belt in 2 years. But with Canelo moving up to 168 and doing what he's doing, with Triple G, do not know about him. Andrade is now at 168 pounds. Middleweight is it is wide open there to be for someone to take over as that dude in the division. And the more I see Adames fight, and I know he has that loss from a few years back down at 147 pounds, I believe it was. But since he's moved up from 54 to 60, he's better, significantly better. And the skills are there, the confidence is there, and he looks like he's the truth at 160 pounds. I don't know too many fighters who can beat this guy the way he's fighting now.
Well, he has the fortune of stepping into the middleweight division at a time where it's a pretty thin division. The past generation of really talented middleweights have either moved on or retired for the most part. The only guys left in the division, actually the only one really left in the division legitimately at this point is Janibek Alam Kanuli. So Adames, to his credit, has stepped forward, made a case for himself. It's very hard to tell, though, level of competition. I think the world of Julian Williams. I think he's a brilliant boxing mind. If you've never heard him interviewed at length, simply talking about boxing itself and assessing fighters past, present, and future, do yourself a favor, look him up. He's a great interview. He's had some good fights. He's had some not so good fights. He was competitive. You always want to see a former champion make it to the final bell, if possible, if they're not getting hurt, because once in a while, that inner championship mindset drives them forward, and things happen that with an ordinary fighter they don't in those last couple of rounds. You need a knockout to win kind of performances, and they're rare, but they're not. It's not out of the question. He was definitely being beaten. What Mark Nelson thought he saw, it's kind of along the lines of whatever Tony Weeks thought he saw with Romero hitting Ismael Barroso. In fact, the moment that he stepped in and waved off the fight, Williams was throwing back what looked like would have been a landed punch, except for Nelson got in the way. And it was in the 11th round. So you're really close to the end of that fight. Dang it. Just not a good way to end a fight, even if Adames would have gone on to win, which in likelihood he would have. But yet again, we have a big uproar. Nobody was more upset about it than Stephen Breadman Edwards, Williams' trainer, went absolutely haywire. He got in the ring. Yeah. He is yelling at Nelson.
I think part of that was him putting it on for the camera.
Maybe some of it. Not a good look. Breadman, I get that you're upset, and everybody's emotional, but yeah, in retrospect, you're going to look at that and say, man, I needed to keep my head together. And you need to do that for your fighter and your entire team in the corner as well. You really do. You have your say afterward if you want to. You do as many post-fight interviews as you want to afterward. Get everyone composed, collected. Yeah, but I do understand why you didn't like it, at bottom line. And there were a lot of people who didn't like it. But Adames is going to move forward now in this position of surprisingly being the name at middleweight. Yeah, we still do not know what is up with Gennady Golovkin. I personally think he's retired. I think that the only reason there isn't a door slammed shut is in the event there is one big offer on the table, a homecoming fight in Kazakhstan or something we aren't seeing on the horizon. But he's become very disenchanted with boxing as a business. He's done an interview with me to that effect. He's started to be a lot more open about it. I think, his promoter, Tom Loeffler, and the other people who've worked with him over the years, Eddie Hearn, they know where he stands. And it's interesting to me that his trainer, his late career trainer, Jonathan Banks, who was a heavyweight, professional himself. I have asked Jonathan Banks for years, virtually every time I see him. It's become a joke. I say, Jonathan, are you officially retired yet? Did you formally announce your retirement? Are you retired? And he just looks at me and he'll wink or he'll laugh or say, not yet. Not yet. You don't have to make a big announcement like Joshua Franco did to be retired. If you don't fight, you're retired. I mean, eventually age is going to catch up with you. Both Jonathan and Gennady are over 40. There's probably more likelihood of Jonathan Banks coming back than there is of Golovkin, but I don't think it's going to happen with either one of them. So that gives Adames a totally clear lane. I would think you're going to have more guys at 154, maybe even 147, clear my throat, move up because those belts are up for grabs. They are. And you've got some talent just beneath 160 that maybe needs to be looking at their potential opportunities in the near future.
Not hint, wink, wink.
Wink. Yep. Everybody can hear between the words and read between the lines who's a fan of this show.
Indeed. Let's move to some news here. And we talked a lot about Canelo Alvarez in past episodes, who he could possibly fight next, be it be Vol, be it that looks like that's not going to happen. Talk of him fighting Badu Jack, that's not going to happen. A fighter we also talked about is the aforementioned Charlo, who we brought up during the conversation about Adamas. And yeah, Gail, Adamas, Canelo made some news and made some headlines this week, dropping a simple message on Instagram that he has left Matchroom, signed a 3-fight deal with PBC. It looks like he's going to return into the ring in September with Charlo, current middleweight champion. Looks like it's going to be the opponent. Box folks on social media had their share of fun trolling one Eddie Hearn over at Matchroom, but the possibilities for Canelo over at PBC, Gail, your thoughts on this move? Surprising?
Once again, Canelo Alvarez and his trainer manager, Eddie Reynoso, are steps ahead of everybody else. Every time. They've looked at the landscape. Canelo has made no secret that he doesn't have that many fights left. He wants them all to be premium fights. He's looking at the universe of potential opponents, and they are on that PBC side of the fence if you're looking at chess moves down the board and not just the next fight. Great move. He's worked with Al Heyman and PBC before, so they're known players. Excuse me. His contract, his agreements with Eddie Hearn were over. I don't recall if they were a 1-1 or just one-offs or two, but it's not like he left Matchroom. He just didn't re-sign or re-up for any fights going forward with Matchroom. And it's a distinction with a difference. It is. But yeah, everybody had their fun, and it didn't hurt that Canelo had just been over in Italy at the Dolce & Gabbana, fashion show. And Eddie's probably thinking, damn, I don't get any more Dolce pajamas or gear from Canelo. Shit, I got to buy my own. Oh, that's going to suck, Eddie. I don't know if we're going to see him in much Dolce going forward, but he's now, of course, spinning this saying, well, now we aren't burdened with all of that money having to be set aside from the Matchroom budget for Canelo. So just look and see what we're going to be able to do with everybody else in our stable. Oh, good on you, Eddie. That's what a promoter does, and nobody does that stuff better than Eddie Hearn. So he is going to lure the elusive Jermall Charlo, future of boxing, out into the future. He has not had a fight now in more than 2 years. Anybody out there listening want to answer the trivia question of when was Jermall Charlo's last fight without looking at BoxRec? Don't you cheat. Don't you cheat. I'm going to cheat. I did look. June 19th, 2021 against Juan Macias Montiel, a blowout unanimous decision. And before that, it was Sergey Derevyanchenko, and that was also a fairly definitive win. And before that, it was his fight against Dennis Hogan in 2019. Seriously, it's time for Charlo to take a significant fight. And this blunts a lot of the criticism that Canelo has taken over the years about denying Black American opponents a fight. A lot of baggage going on with that conversation. Whatever there was has been put to the side. And once again, Canelo's been very smart about his career, and he is taking on Charlo at exactly the right time. I am a little surprised that Charlo is willing to take this fight against Canelo after not having a fight for 2 years with no tune-up, no idea exactly where he stands until he walks into that ring with Canelo. And we know that there is a little bit of shine off Canelo's reputation, but not that much. And you would have to make Canelo the favorite. I don't know about the overwhelming favorite, but I would say a significant favorite. The promotion will be very interesting. And I think all eyes are going to be on Charlo to see how's he handling it? How's he look? How's he training? You know, is he mentally prepared? Is his head back in the game? He has had a lot of out of the ring issues in addition to injury that have kept him out. And we've seen what happens with fighters when their mind isn't set right. You know, a winning fight begins in the mind. Focus begins in the mind. And Charlo's going to need that if he thinks he's going to be competitive with Canelo. After that, well, y'all know we're all damn salivating over a fight with David Benavidez. But then down the road, couple years, there's one guy who's got a big fight coming up, who we know is going to move up at least to 154, who's a big guy even at that division and could make 160 without thinking about it. Whoa, let's move up to 168 if you're chasing greatness and the truth about yourself.
I think she's referring to one Errol Spence, who, as we all know, is going to fight Bud Crawford July 29th. During the pre-fight talk, Spence has talked about moving up. There's been talk of Spence moving up to 154, 160, maybe even 168 once he gets done with the situation with Bud, because I think they're going to fight more than once. I think they're going to fight back to back. All I know is, and I'm going to put some comments up here, Daniel, at an undisclosed location, says hello, Gail.
He just can't quit us. He just can't quit the pound for pound boxing report. You're on vacation, man.
Shout out to Drew Titan LLC, who says that Canelo runs boxing. And he mentioned that his boy Montiel, and then you're absolutely right, the Drew Titan. He said, and before that it was Korobov and Brandon Adams. Appreciate the comments. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. It'll help the overall algorithms and get us closer to being monetized. Keep the comments and the questions coming. You mentioned Benavidez, who's in talks maybe to fight David Morrell. All I know is, if with this 3-fight deal with Canelo, the only thing I'm going to say is, if we do not see a fight between Canelo and the Mexican monster, as he calls himself now, formerly known as the Red Flag, David Benavidez, if Benavidez is not in the mix here, I'm telling PBC to kick rocks, because he's been calling this dude out for how many years now? I still say there's still a question in my head and in my heart of whether Canelo wants to fight this dude. But since he's moved over to PBC now, he said that gives some inclination that fight could happen. If it doesn't, I'm raising holy hell if I'm David Benavidez. But be that as it may, Daniel said one more comment here that he says Benavidez versus Munguia.
There you go.
He killed Munguia.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. I think this allows Canelo cover about saying, well, got this 3-fight deal. I'm fighting Charlo now. Let's see what happens. In the meantime, Benavidez has got to have at least one fight, maybe two. Who are they going to be with? Maybe David Morrell, who has publicly called David Benavidez the, quote, biggest bitch in boxing, which cracks me up. He is.
Who knew that Morrell's Twitter game was so strong? His Twitter and his trash talk game was so strong. I did not know.
It is. First of all, he has learned English at warp speed. I'm very impressed. I mean, good for him. He likes to come out to play. He is not your typical sort of low-key, dry, defensive fighting Cuban. He is a different breed. Good for him. But there is the Jaime Munguia option. There is that option. And both those fights, are very exciting for different reasons. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit if Canelo wanted to see whether or not Morrell in particular might beat Benavidez. And then he'll say, well, I don't want to fight Benavidez if he doesn't have a belt. I'll fight Morrell. Still a dangerous fight for Canelo, but I think maybe a more winnable fight for him. We'll see. And on the other side of this equation, if we do see a fight made between Benavidez and Munguia, and Benavidez's father trainer really wants that fight, he, I'm sure, thinks that Benavidez could put on quite the show. But I would say that even though I definitely favor Benavidez to win, Benavidez might get the shit kicked out of him doing it too. He's going to take some incoming fire. Even if Munguia loses, he will go down in flames. He landed some incredibly hard shots on Derevyanchenko. Don't you think that escaped notice? So maybe Canelo thinks, well, if Benavidez wins against either of these guys, but particularly Munguia, maybe he's going to be damaged a little bit and give me more of a shot at him. So, or if Morrell beats him, Canelo doesn't even have to think about it. So once again, he's playing chess. He is playing it like a grandmaster, looking ahead at what's to come. And I do think the most exciting prospect down the road, as both these guys are about to close out their careers, is considering the very real potential of a fight between Canelo and Errol Spence. That's quite something to think about. But hold all your tickets, everybody. It's just not going to happen right away. In this case, we are going to see it build up over time and see those on-ramps more clearly than we do today.
Indeed,
but it is now a very distinct possibility.
One more thing, I'm going to add this because I didn't put it here in the docket that I sent to you earlier, Gil. We forgot to talk about this last week. It slipped my mind. Didn't think about it until the end of the show last week, but we talked about Sonny Edwards making his Matchroom debut, defending his belt with the decision. Well, after his win, it was announced by Matchroom and Eddie Hearn that Edwards is going to be fighting for unification against Bam Rodriguez, who moved down from 115 to 112 to win the WBO belt at flyweight. Bam is currently recovering from a broken jaw that he suffered in this last bout. But Edwards has been calling to fight a significant fight, a big name, a unification bout at 112, or even he's talked about moving up to 115 if he had to. But the big fight that Sonny has been calling for a number of years now, he's getting it.
Yeah, good for him, good for Bam, good for Matchroom. I mean, the whole reason that Eddie signed Sonny Edwards was to make this fight. These guys in the smaller weight divisions, a lot like the women at the top of their divisions, man, they engage. They go for it. There's no reason not to. They've always led the way as far as best fighting the best. And taking an L or two has certainly not hurt the careers of the great names in that division, all heading for the Hall of Fame. Well, whether at flyweight, light flyweight, super flyweight. And Bam wants that. Every fighter does. Edwards thinks he's capable of that too. Be a very interesting fight. And, this is the perfect comeback fight for Rodriguez. Bam, took a very, very serious injury with the broken jaw. Apparently he is back in the gym and working, but he was still not cleared to spar until apparently just last week, and still hasn't done that. They're taking it very carefully, as they should. And, for him to come back in a fight at this level without the so-called tune-up, that's pretty bold. Edwards is not a power puncher. He is a volume puncher. And Bam is so nimble and so fleet it's going to be a fascinating fight to see it. And really it's the perfect style to give him a championship fight right out of the gate, rehabbing after his broken jaw. I mean, that's just incredibly impressive. And good for Edwards. You know, he has stayed true to his word. He wanted the fight. He was willing to sign the fight, and he's not going to be able to fight at home. The fight is apparently going to take place in the United States. Edwards apologized to his fans in the UK, saying that he would have liked to bring the fight there, but, you know, it wasn't in the cards. He wanted the fight. He talked about how, you know, he will rematch him there, you know, if he, you know, when he wins. But British fans travel. So, Sonny, you're going to have fans in, you know, whatever venue you fight in. Of course, all of our friends in San Antonio and those who like to travel to San Antonio for a fight would really love to see it there in front of Bam's hometown fans. I think it might be in Texas. It's a good bet. I'm not sure it'll be San Antonio. You know, we've got a lot of venues in Dallas and Houston who could easily host a fight at that level. We'll see what happens. But really good news.
Just wanted to give folks an update on that, but again, we missed it last week, and just I felt now was the time to talk about it. Another fight that could potentially happen has been talked about really all throughout this year. The back and forth between former heavyweight champions Deontay Wilder, Andy Ruiz. We thought it was going to happen following Wilder's win against following Wilder's return to action last fall, right? But didn't hear word of it as discussion rose about this potential 4-man tournament over in the Middle East, and the possibility of Bomb Squad fighting Anthony Joshua. But now, over this weekend, really, Wilder has come out with a video saying that he's sent Ruiz a contract, basically challenging Andy Ruiz to sign it. Ruiz came back with a follow-up video say, you just be patient, Mr. Bomb Squad. Just going over the final points. I want you in the ring as much as you want me in the ring. Could we see this fight take place after all this year?
Yeah, we very well might. Both guys have been in the gym. Andy has been in his gym in the San Diego area. Deontay has been back in the gym. And I do like what I'm seeing from him, at least on social media. He looks
trim. Really trim.
You know what? He looks invigorated. The energy is back. The smile is on his face. He is the happy warrior, ready to kick some ass, and gladly. And I'm so glad to see it. I actually sent him a note to say, you know, it is good to see the smile back on your face, Deontay. I like the matchup. I mean, at this point of their careers, you know, whatever other possible fights are out there, you know, the dance partners at the top of the division need to sort things out. And right now, they're all in this holding pattern, this stall of everybody trying to figure out who's going to actually step in the ring, who's going to actually fight who. Is there Saudi money? Are we going to get a double header, triple header? Well, you know, these other guys can't wait around forever. That's a makeable fight with two significant fan bases, and they're American heavyweights. One a Black American from the South, the other a Mexican American from the other side of the country. You know, that's the kind of fight that ends up being a surprisingly good draw. I'm not sure how long it'll last. It could be crazy. That's the reason a lot of casuals especially watch heavyweight fights, for exactly that kind of fight that those guys can deliver. So, yeah, I think we will see it. I think it'll be later in the year. And the calendar, honestly, is starting to get pretty full, right? Leading right up to Mexican Independence Day, middle of September. So we're really looking at that last quarter of the year starting to fill in. And, you know, boxing fans, if you're complaining about anything this year, about fights not being made, you just need to shut up. It has been a great year for matchups. We have nothing to complain about this year. Well, you can complain about the referees, or, you know, I take that back. Boxing fans always have something to complain about, but this year
Right.
it's not the matchups.
Let's preview some fights here before we begin to sign off.
Okay.
And one more comment here I want to read off here in the chat. Original Bad one before Puff says if Benavidez and Morrell doesn't happen and Bubu Andrade fights either and wins,
Oh my
would
God.
that not put him in the driver's seat to fight Canelo? He's been chasing him longer than anyone else since 154. In theory, you're right. But the problem is Canelo's not going to give him that opportunity. He's a spiteful little bugger, and we saw that in that post conference, basically telling him get the F out of here. He at this point, Andrade could do whatever, prostitute himself out there, do any and for a fight with Canelo. He's just not going to get it. Just out of sheer spite. Out
Never,
of sheer spite,
ever.
it's not gonna
No,
happen.
not gonna happen. Nah.
Even though I agree with you 100%, he's been chasing original Bad. That he's been chasing Canelo since
Well,
for
dogs chase
for
cars too, and they don't always catch them. That's not gonna happen.
what damn near a decade now, almost.
It's a bad style fight for Canelo. Andrade, sad to say, is not a draw. There's not any money in it. Nobody's going to buy that pay-per-view except for the diehard Canelo fans. And Andrade, unfortunately, by trying to upstage Canelo at a post-fight press conference that had nothing to do with him, he burned the bridge. I mean, he burned it. And Canelo sadly made a fool out of him. All we remember, who remembers exactly what Boo Boo said to Canelo? I'll wait. No, we all remember Canelo yelling in English, his newfound command of English language swearing and saying, you're just in for the payday, payday, payday. We still see that stuff pop up on social media to this day. So yeah, that's not going to happen. Sad to say, not a chance. Canelo Alvarez will fight Gennady Golovkin a fourth time before he ever fights Demetrius Andrade.
One more comment before we move on to fights here. He says that from Original Bad. He says that Boo Boo isn't as popular, but he isn't as popular. But boxing heads know how good he is, so they avoid him forever. Like they avoid him because he has skills. I think he typed wrong, was quick with the typing, whatever. Because they avoid him with skills, even slowing down a bit, he can beat Canelo. Has always been the best. He's the
He
most
is very
problematic
good.
from a style perspective.
Yeah.
But because of that and other mitigating factors, again, I'll double down, triple down, quadruple down, till infinity. He deserves it. Just not going to happen. Sad, but it's not going to happen.
And he hasn't helped himself. More than once in fights, he's scored an early knockdown. Excuse me, I have a little emergency, so I'm going to be back in just a second.
I'll just move on, and we'll get ready to preview some fights here. I'll move on while Gail tends to a bit of an emergency here. Focusing on, let's start with card is going to take place, going to air actually live on ESPN Plus over in Manchester, England. As far as I'm concerned, it's the main fight of the weekend. Going to focus on the ladies here, as Franchon Crews-Dezurn. She's been out of the ring for a long time. Really, the first defense of her undisputed belts at 168 pounds. She beat Ellen Siderus to become undisputed last year, but she's been out of the ring for, I think, around a year, if not more. She's returning to the ring to face Savannah Marshall, former middleweight champion. Many people remember Marshall for giving Clarissa Shields a tough go in what was a high-profile bout last October over in the UK. Marshall is moving up 8 pounds, and interestingly enough, it was Crews-Dezurn who made the initiative, made the push to get this fight, immediately following Shields lost to, Marshall's lost to Shields. Crews-Dezurn was in attendance. She basically, stepped to Savannah Marshall and told her that if you move up to 168 pounds, I'm gonna give you a shot. Now Marshall took some time off to get over that loss to Shields. She said she contemplated retirement, but she's back in the fold. Many people want to see Franchon Crews fight Jade Green. Green is Franchon Crews' mandatory by the WBA, WBC, but as I said earlier, cash rules in the sport as it stands right now. From a financial perspective, it makes more sense for her to fight a Marshall over in England than to risk the title against a very dangerous Jade Green. Both ladies, Crews-Dezurn and Marshall, they like to come forward. The champion, big for that division for 168 pounds. I could make the argument, however, that Marshall is the bigger hitter. Even though she's moving up in weight, she's proven to have more one-punch knockout power. Makes for good action because they both like to come forward. Marshall in the lead-up has called Crews-Dezurn dirty. Crews-Dezurn is basically saying, she's made the allegation that Marshall is somehow privileged because she's getting this opportunity right after a loss. I don't know if you're back, Gail. Let me know.
I am back. Didn't mean to alarm our listeners. I have a dog who likes to speaking of fights, likes to tangle with coyotes from time to time. I had to call him off. Yeah.
Your thoughts on this fight, Gail?
To talk about taking fights you shouldn't take. Listen, I love this fight. I love the fact that, as unfortunate as it is that it became the main event, because the original main event got called off due to injury to Liam Smith. It was supposed to be a undercard co-main supporting Smith versus Chris Eubank. I love the fact that this fight is carrying the card at the top. These two ladies know how to sell a fight. I think they respect each other. Maybe don't particularly like each other. Maybe that'll be different after the fight. I think that often happens. And it's an interesting matchup because you're right. Crews-Dezurn uses her size well. She's kind of a bludgeon puncher. She can be a volume puncher. She's great at trying to smother and lean on her opponents. She uses every tool she's got. Marshall is a more pure power puncher. It's tougher, though, for the women to be the power punchers when they've only got 2 minutes. We see it all the time. If this was if this fight had 3-minute rounds, I'd favor Marshall. It doesn't, so I favor Crews-Dezurn. And I think it was a smart play. It extends Crews-Dezurn's career a little bit because, a lot like some of the other ladies in the upper weight divisions, like Claressa, even at middleweight, they start running out of opponents that are worthy of them. And the last two that are standing there for Franchon are Jade Green, who looks like the reincarnation of Ann Wolfe, and she is a scary, scary woman, and she does have that kind of knockout power. Very impressive. And her old foe and now extremely good friend, Claressa Shields. So Claressa would need to come up a weight division. They made their professional debuts against each other in a 4-round fight on the War.
They went to war.
One undercard. And I'll tell you what, ringside, I thought Franchon won, or at least got a draw. I would have been perfectly happy with a draw in that fight. So a rematch would be great for both of them. except for the fact that they really are tight with each other. So if they've got to get in the ring, they're professionals, they'll do it. I don't think Franchon will be making Claressa's ring attire or pre-fight dress, because she is a fashion designer and she has, for the last few years, made all of Claressa's fight clothing for her. I think Claressa is going to have to find herself another designer if they face off. But I'm thinking that might be the fight that, Franchon is looking forward to, maybe, near where she thinks she's going to end her career. She ramped up.
She's going to avoid
Pro
green
a
as long as
little bit.
possible.
Yeah, she is. She does not like her age being talked about, and I won't do it here. But she didn't start a professional career at 20 or 25, so she knows that the years are starting to tick off for her. But I do think she's still got plenty of good fights left, and we don't know if there are some younger fighters coming up who might make good opponents. But yeah, Shadeja Green, she puts the fear in just about everybody who's ever seen her fight. If you listening have not seen Shadeja Green, you need to look her up on YouTube. It's Shadasa Green, and you'll be impressed, I promise you. But should be a good fight this weekend. I don't. I think you could play it either way. I'll be very interested to see what the betting odds are come the weekend.
Absolutely. On the undercard, I find this interesting that Natasha Jonas, who ThreeKingsBoxing.com Women's Fighter of the Year, right? She moved up from 135, all the way up to 154. And in a calendar year, won 3 of the 4 world titles at 154 pounds, right? She was talking up a potential fight with Claressa Shields at a catch weight. It's not going to happen. Just couldn't come to the table when it comes to money. But anyway, Jonas has decided to move back down moving down, I should say, to 147 pounds, fighting Candy Wyatt for the vacant IBF belt at welterweight. To me, having watched Wyatt numerous times, I think she has nothing for Jonas. I think Jonas, even as she's getting up there in age, she's like 37, 38 years old, too skilled and too fast for the likes of Wyatt. But I think the main question for me is, Gail, what do you make of Jonas deciding at this point to move down to 147?
Well, the women are often forced to move around in weight divisions in a way that the men really don't. It's not unusual because they need to find opponents. And the women at the top of each of the divisions start running out. I mean, they honestly start looking down the top 10 and like, yep, fought her. Yep, fought her. Oh, she's retired. She's, behind a promotional firewall, and their options are limited. So if Jonas can make the weight comfortably to take the fight and stay busy, hey, I am always in favor of a fighter staying busy, even with, maybe not the opponent we hope for. Most of the women give a pretty decent accounting of themselves when they get to this level. So I am perfectly okay with it. And she may perform well at the weight and decide, maybe I can take a few more fights at lower weight. And dropping in weight helps the women find more opponents, no matter where they are on the scale. The lower you go, the talent pool tends to get bigger. Just simply, women are not going to be dominant in weight divisions, at the upper end like men are. It's the opposite. So good for her.
And I think we're going to end things on that note. I want to thank everybody who joined us with their questions and their comments in the live chat. The original bad one, Daniel, Drill Titan LLC. Appreciate it again. If you're checking us out on YouTube, Whenever you're listening to this, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button again.
And I'm going
It'll
to
help it.
interrupt you just once to
Mhm.
say, you know what? We have some damn smart listeners. We have some smart listeners that always add to the show. It is really rare we get a troll or somebody who's a casual. So I applaud you all and thank you.
Indeed, indeed. Appreciate you saying that, Gail. Again, Daniel from Fort Boxing News and the Inscriber, he was in the chat. He's away right now, undisclosed location. Hope to have him back next week. But Gail from nyfights.com for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk media, for those who are in need of a good PR person, because I'll keep saying it. The one thing these fighters are missing is good PR, as evidenced by that since deleted Adrian Broner interview
Oh,
that he was
it
just
doesn't matter.
drunk as a skunk.
Oh,
And Errol Spence even chimed in and basically called him an addict at this point. Sad situation. I wasn't able to catch the whole video because it's now vanished. It'll probably pop up back up
it's not.
eventually.
Michael, it is not vanished in the short, almost 90 minutes of this program. Pieces of it are popped up all over the damn place. Things live on the internet forever. And there is a very serious discussion underway about what in the world led that to being put up live and conducted in the first place, given clearly the state that Broner was in at the time. It was irresponsible to even entertain letting him be exposed like that, no matter what you think of him in or out
Right.
of the ring. Yeah, he's got issues. We've always known he's got issues. And I will leave it at this at the end of this discussion live on Monday night. It looked like Jamel Herring, who has been a friend of Adrian's, is going to go check on him, see how he's doing. At least there is somebody trying to look out for him. And, that is admirable, that there is at least somebody out there like Jamel who's worried about the man first and everything else later.
Yeah, it's just basically just that situation has just sprung up as we're doing this live recording. So yeah, sad situation. It seems like Broner, who claimed that he's straightened up and flying right. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case, but we'll keep you abreast on that situation. But anyway, Gail from NY Fights, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to
Yeah,
talk media,
we'll just
for
end.
those who want to check you out on TMZ,
No,
let the folks know where they can find you.
it's nyfights.com, nyfights.com. There's an excellent piece I recommend to all of you about the future of Edgar Berlanga on the site. Very interesting read. And our weekly Who Won the Weekend. And you might be surprised at some of the choices.
And indeed, again, for those wonder where they can get in contact with, touch bases with Daniel on these social media streets. Daniel from Full Boxing News and the Inscriber, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk professional wrestling, um, NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. You can catch him on Twitter at Rawkuz99, RAWKUZ 99. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance, and check out my my fragrances of the day. You can do so on TikTok and IG, Brother JRSC. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, we will have a recap of the super middleweight showdown between Franchon Crews-Dezurn, Savannah Marshall. We will also recap Natasha Jonas and Candy Wyatt, and we will do a preview of the return of Virgil Ortiz Jr. Gets back in the ring on July 8th in his hometown of San Antonio. Well, not his hometown, but in San Antonio, Texas, against Emiliano Staniosis. That bout has been postponed multiple times. That's going to take place on the Zone that same evening in Showtime. Boots Ennis, who is now interim IBF champion at 147 pounds. He defends that belt. No. Yeah, he fights Roy Mon via That fight is going to happen in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So we will highlight those two fights in particular when it comes to our previews. So again, I want to thank everybody. The comments and whatever in the comments and questions in the live chat. For Daniel, who is not with us, from Daniel from For Boxing News and the Inscriber, for Gail of nyfights.com. I'm your host, Michael. This is episode 410 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will see you guys next time. Y'all have a good one. Good evening. Good night.